What is going on, everybody? I hope you had a great 4th of July. I want to welcome you into the teens of my 2020 NFL Deep Dive series with the reveal of the number 19 team in my power rankings, the Arizona Cardinals. Before we hop in, I want to issue a quick reminder to please hit that like button down below. You guys have been showing up pretty big with that, so I appreciate you. It really helps. Share the video and support my channel, so I appreciate you for taking a second to do that. So this Cardinals team, we talked about the Broncos a few episodes ago being one of the hype monsters of this offseason, and the Cardinals team are right with them, maybe even above them, and I think a lot of that is warranted, surrounded with Cliff Kingsbury, Kyler Murray, the trade for DeAndre Hopkins. There is a ton of excitement around this Cardinals team, who took the big risk moving on from Rosen to swing for the fences with a higher upside quarterback in Kyler Murray, and now the question is, can they reach that? Even though this is a team that lacks a little bit more of that depth and experience, there's a lot of reasons to be excited about this team too. So I'm really looking forward to this deep dive. It's going to be one of the more fun ones that I record over the course of the summer. So if you're new to the series, what we do is we go through the roster, we rank each position group, how they stack up against the rest of the league. While we do that, you will be looking at my own custom Madden roster. So while it is a video game, I realize that they are my own ratings, and it's a nice copyright-free graphic that I get to use to show you how I perceive each player. And then after that, we're going to look at this team's schedule, talk about this team's Vegas over-under, and my win total expectations for this team. So before we hop into the roster portion of this, I do want to get the coach and culture out of the way. And it's very polarizing here. I'm very optimistic about Cliff Kingsbury, bringing in that Texas Tech Big 12 offense, kind of professionalized it and tweaked it a little bit to the point where it was innovative and looked different, but also had some more of those traditional under center looks, and really did a good job. And by the end of the season, I think this team was a handful to deal with, which says a lot considering the offensive line he had to work with, the skill players he had to work with, and as much as I like Kyler Murray, the rookie quarterback is always going to be tough to work with. So I really was impressed with what Cliff did as an offensive coordinator in year one. They are going to rank 9th for offensive coaching and culture, but only 20th overall. And part of that culturally is not just coaching. There's a lot of inexperience and youth and unproven players on this team. So you do have some culture development to do, but the defensive coordinator here is also something I'm not exactly excited about with Vance Joseph. Yes, he's a former head coach, but he's one of those guys where it's like, what does he really bring to the table? It's not like he's a schematic genius. He doesn't have the best track record of getting the most out of players and player development. So just because you're a former head coach, also one that got canned almost immediately, it's like, are you really all that good of a defensive coordinator? And in his first year in Arizona, it really wasn't any different. He didn't get any of these guys to really play above their potential. If anything, guys were disappointing. So I do have some massive questions about this defense. Obviously, ranking this team 19th overall, well, maybe not obviously. Some people don't understand that that's pretty respectful. Like, I'm saying that this team has a real chance of being a playoff team this year, which is saying a lot for a team that picked first overall over a year ago and was in the top 10 again this year. I think this team is poised for a big step up, but with some of this youth and inexperience, what can we really expect? Well, let's get into the roster and talk about the players first. So starting with the quarterback room, I mean, you guys know, those that have been around this channel, I'm a huge advocate of Kyler Murray. I think he's a really special player. I think the sky is the limit for him. Thinking of Patrick Mahomes, Russell Wilson, having similar skill sets as far as the most important thing you got to talk about with Kyler is the arm talent. What I like to say with Kyler is the ability to put the ball wherever he wants, whenever he wants. Whether he's in the pocket, throwing off his back foot, rolling left, rolling right, his touch and ball placement and accuracy and the ability to have that arm talent to get it there with velocity, no matter where he is. That's the most special aspect of Kyler Murray. That's what is the number one trait that makes guys like Patrick Mahomes and Russell Wilson the players they are. But obviously, the play extension, the playmaking ability. It's not just being a good athlete, right? Like Kyler Murray's backup, Brett Hundley's a good athlete, but he can't do what Kyler does as far as having that balance of knowing, you hear me say this all the time, but I'll go even deeper into it, knowing how to sense pressure and having the know-how to use your feet to manipulate the pocket and extend plays, and understanding the feel of the play. This is something I'm very critical of guys like Tua or Derek Carr, even guys like Dak Prescott sometimes. I have questions about this, but there's a right answer on every play, but it's a hard thing to find, whether it's scrambling for a first down, whether it's staying in the pocket, stepping up and hanging in there, whether it's getting outside the pocket, keeping your eyes downfield, and knowing when to take the check down versus when to not take the check down, when the play isn't dead, to keep it alive. Kyler Murray has that healthy balance of all of those things, and it's extremely rare, and that is why I think Kyler has the upside of a top 3 to 5 quarterback in this league. He shows that good things come in small packages sometimes. He's 5'9", maybe 5'10" on a good day. But he's breaking the mold of saying you got to be this 6'5" Justin Herbert rocket arm statue in the pocket. That's not the NFL in 2020. So I'm really excited to watch Kyler Murray. If you want to be critical of the guy, I will say the depth of target was very low last year. They kind of reined him in a little bit. I do think some of the new pieces, being in year 2 of this offense, we are going to see him show off that arm a little more this season, and they're going to make an emphasis with DeAndre Hopkins in here and a better offensive line to really push the ball downfield a little more, to the point where this can be a terrifying offense. Because last year it was a little gimmicky. It was tough to defend. Some weeks, certain matchups, they were really hard to defend, but you didn't really see Kyler throwing the ball all over the field. I know he can do it. He did it at Oklahoma. He did it within individual games as a rookie. It's just a matter of executing that, right? And then the other thing I will say is that his pre- and post-snap processor, I don't think they're poor, but he has a lot of room to grow. Last year was only his second season of high-level competitive football. He had 1 year at Oklahoma, 1 year in the NFL. The one thing that's nice is he doesn't have the same thing that guys like Trubisky have, or even sometimes you'll see with like Jared Goff, where when the play breaks down, like they kind of panic and they're unpredictable. You don't really know what to expect. We talked about Kyler's healthy balance and feel for the game. That's a big part of the post-snap processor. So I do think he can get there. And even guys like Russell Wilson, Patrick Mahomes, maybe this is an out there take, but I don't think either of those guys are top 5 pre- or post-snap processors. I don't think they're the smartest quarterbacks in the league. They're very smart, though. They're top 16. They're well above average as far as what to do at the line of scrimmage, football IQ, understanding coverages, what beats certain coverages. They're very smart at that, but they're not elite at either of those, I would say. So Kyler Murray, I think, can fit that mold. If he can just become a really smart quarterback, he doesn't have to be the smartest quarterback. That's when we can really start to talk about Kyler as an elite quarterback. Now, does that happen this year? Probably not. He's still very young. He's still developing, he's still growing. It could happen, though. We've now seen both Patrick Mahomes 2 years ago, Lamar Jackson last year. Year 2 was like night and day. So I'm not going to say it can't happen. It's just that would be inconsistent with historical records. Let's just say that. Usually you don't develop at the rate that we saw a guy like Lamar Jackson do last year, but it very well could happen. So this team is going to ebb and flow by what Kyler Murray can do. If they're going to be a playoff team, it is to me going to be Kyler Murray being a top 10 quarterback this year, which I very clearly think he can get there. I rank them 11th right now. Brett Hundley is the backup. This team's going to sink if anything happens to Kyler, and that's perfectly fine. So there is your quarterback breakdown. That's the heart of the excitement for this team, right? They swung for the fences. They said Josh Rosen's fine, but we're kind of ready for some more excitement here with Kyler Murray. We want to swing for the fences and win a Super Bowl here. This is going to be a big year to know, like, can Kyler Murray be one of those perennial Super Bowl contending quarterbacks, guys like Rodgers, Mahomes, Russell Wilson, guys that are always going to win 10, 11 games almost no matter what you put around them. And it's not make or break this year for Kyler by no stretch of the imagination, but it's exciting to know that we could walk out of this season with an answer to that being yes. So we'll see. We'll see what all happens this year. It's going to be fun to watch. Let's go through the rest of the roster here. The running back room, we spent a lot of time on the quarterback, so let's shorten up the running back situation here. It's pretty straightforward, right? They have skill sets that fit this scheme, this spread scheme, where you want to have enough speed and power to hit a hole hard, but you also need to be able to catch swing passes out of the backfield, consistently make the first man miss, be that home run threat. And they've got that in Kenyon Drake, in Chase Edmonds. A good combination, a really good move to go and get Kenyon Drake. He comes out of Miami and finds a spot that understands how to use his skill set. He is the perfect fit here. We saw Kenyon Drake in Miami for a long time. He's not an elite running back, but in the right system like this, he's going to be very productive. He's not Saquon Barkley. He's not Christian McCaffrey, but in the right scheme, he can produce at a similar level to those guys. I mean, we saw Kenyon Drake, when he got the full workload at the end of last season, he was one of the most productive backs in the NFL. So I like what they have in Kenyon Drake. He's in there on the franchise tag this year. I don't know if he's the long-term answer or not. I don't think this team's year after year going to put a lot of weight in that position. You also have Chase Edmonds, who I would say is just a worse version of Kenyon Drake, but still a very good player. He is smooth, catching the ball out of the backfield. He's very explosive. He will make guys miss. Just a great combination of running backs. They rank 20th. That's really all that Cliff Kingsbury needs. In a vacuum, these guys might rank 20th, but in the right system here, they're going to produce at a good, efficient level. And then you even draft Eno Benjamin in the 7th round. Him in his sophomore season at Arizona State looked like he was going to be a 2nd-round pick. People were comparing him to Alvin Kamara, and he looked like it. But in his final season at Arizona State, his ability to make the first man miss almost fell off a cliff and led to some concerns about, is he the type of athlete that's going to be able to consistently do that at the next level if he's going to be this sort of shifty, contact balance receiving back? That is his mold. It's an excellent scheme fit. I think if you have injuries to either Drake or Edmonds, Benjamin is going to be able to step into that rotation and be a factor. But I don't know if he's ever going to be an explosive superstar either. Then you have DJ Foster, good special teamer, and that's really it. So 20th for the running back room. I have no complaints. I think Cliff Kingsbury is smart. He's not going to overinvest in this position. He's going to find good athletes that he can manufacture touches and make sure that they have space to operate. That's a big part of this offense. The philosophy is, where is the space in the defense? And when there's run lanes and there's holes to hit hard, they're going to run it right through them. And that's Kenyon Drake, Chase Edmonds are the perfect fit for that philosophy. So the wide receiver ranking here is going to be 6th, and that's a big jump up from what it was last year, because you had kind of a motley crew of guys last year. You even had some weird, guys coming in and out, guys like Trent Sherfield, Keyshawn Johnson, Pharaoh Cooper. Like, it was a massive rotation here, and I expect some of that stuff to be the same, but you've got your focal point of your offense now in DeAndre Hopkins, and I don't know what Bill O'Brien was smoking when he made that trade, but it must have been something good, because he basically got a bag of munchies for the best receiver in the NFL in DeAndre Hopkins. And this, to me, is what's going to help this offense open up. We talked about how kind of short this offense operated last year as far as depth of target and stuff. I look at DeAndre Hopkins as a guy that's going to open things up. He's going to allow Cliff Kingsbury to call some more deeper concepts with him, because he is an all-around player, but definitely a deep threat. Beyond that, Kyler Murray's eyes will be levitating towards DeAndre Hopkins, and if he's naturally going downfield, the ball is going to find itself downfield very often. You can't say enough about DeAndre Hopkins. Any kind of trait you want to list for a receiver, he is exceptional at, whether it's getting open on all 3 levels of the defense, release off the line of scrimmage, catch and traffic ability, all of it. The dude is a stud. I go back and forth between him and Julio Jones as the best receiver in football. It doesn't really matter. They are total studs. And this addition here is going to be electric. The last thing I'll say about DeAndre Hopkins that quite possibly might be what makes this make the most sense here is, I actually think DeAndre Hopkins is the best receiver in the NFL when the play breaks down, right? When those first couple reads get bottled up, the quarterback starts extending plays, DeAndre Hopkins knows what the play was and what the coverage is, and he is so good at finding the hole in the defense when the play breaks down, getting, the attention of the quarterback, getting in front of the quarterback, making things easier on him. It's one thing to have a quarterback that can run around and just do crazy stuff after the first reads aren't there, but you also need the receivers to know how to react to the quarterback. Otherwise, you're going to get like what happened in Green Bay last year, where Rodgers is just waiting on receivers to find holes in the defense and come back to him. DeAndre Hopkins is always going to be there. He's done this for years with Deshaun Watson. It's going to be just a seamless transition with Kyler Murray. I'm thrilled to see what DeAndre Hopkins and Kyler Murray can do together. And Murray has better ball placement than Deshaun Watson. I'm sorry, he just does. So you might even see some just crazy contested catches with those sort of throws from Kyler Murray where he's on the move and he's able to put it just in the right spot where only DeAndre Hopkins can get it, or it's going to go incomplete. I think this is going to be a match made in heaven. So that's going to boost this thing up. But I also think you're upgrading beyond DeAndre Hopkins as well. It's still a bit of a motley crew, but there's a couple pieces here that could really emerge as legit weapons. So, of course, you have Larry Fitzgerald. He's almost half tight end, half receiver. He'll even put his hand in the dirt and play tight end. I love what he's doing. Like, he loves playing football. He's having fun with this team. He's even outwardly said it. He's learning a new position, basically. Like, he's not a full-on receiver. He almost never plays outside. So he's probably the slowest receiver in the NFL at this point in his career, but he's average speed for a tight end, right? And he's even an average blocker for a tight end. So he's used in interesting ways. He still has hands of glue, and he has the same thing that DeAndre Hopkins has where when that play breaks down, he knows where to go. He knows how to find those holes in the defense. So you're going to have really interesting leveling when the play breaks down with Larry close to Kyler. And then you have DeAndre Hopkins, who I expect to be more in the immediate to deep parts of the field. Whew, yeah, this is going to be a tough team to defend. And then you have Christian Kirk, who's going to be more of the mismatch problem. I've always compared him to Randall Cobb, and I'll stand by that. He's been mostly a slot receiver, throughout his career, going back to Texas Tech. Now, because of necessity here, because you have Larry Fitzgerald, Kirk does step outside, and I think he's still learning a lot of those intricacies as far as releasing against press, the nuances of route running on the outside, body positioning to win contested catches on the outside. I think in an ideal world, Larry retires here and Christian Kirk can eventually come back into the slot, but Larry's still producing. So it's a tough balance. Kirk's kind of in a tough spot, but I do think he's a decent weapon. Some aspects of him as far as his explosiveness after the catch and just raw speed remind me of Deebo Samuel interdivision in a lot of ways. So I do like Christian Kirk. I think he's going to have a solid season. I just think with Larry there in the slot with DeAndre Hopkins, I don't think he's going to be overly productive, but he's a nice piece that I expect to continue to become a better football player here in year 3. Then the big wild card here is Andy Isabella. Can he get on the field as the true outside deep threat here? Was drafted in the second round last year, but really underwhelmed for the majority of last season. But the nice thing you can say is that he came on late as he started getting more playing time. It was a little bizarre why he wasn't on the field as much ahead of guys like Pharaoh Cooper, but he has that speed, and that's really all he has. Everything else is a question mark as far as can he get off of press? How good is he after the catch? All these things, he just kind of has to prove that his speed can translate into productiveness at the NFL. We've seen a lot of speedy receivers that don't work out. So is Andy Isabella going to turn into Brandon Cooks? Or is he going to weed out and become more of a John Ross, Darius Hayward-Bay, Ted Ginn type of player here? It's not all up to this season, but it's a big year for him to prove that he has some of the skill set to play wide receiver, not just the physical skill set. Then you have Keyshawn Johnson. He's an excellent fifth here, a 6th-round pick out of Fresno last year. Another guy that is a smart, heady receiver that understands how to find holes in zones. If Isabella flops, he's going to be a quality fourth. Then you have Hakeem Butler, fourth round pick last year, who basically took a medical red shirt last year. I was very low on Hakeem Butler. A lot of people really liked him because of his highlight reel catches. To me, he's not a great separator. He is remarkably stiff. I don't think he's an excellent fit on this team as far as the kind of offense that they run. So he's there. That's about all I'm going to say about that. I don't have expectations for him myself. I know a lot of people do like him as that bigger-bodied target. Maybe he can surprise me and emerge, but he's got a really tough path with a lot of players that I think are better football players ahead of him. And then even Trent Sherfield's a guy that's earned playing time throughout his career as a total no-name, but I think he might make this team as the 7th. And then you have some competition of other guys trying to get in the mix there. I do think they'll keep 7 wide receivers, especially because Larry is kind of half tight end. Then you do have the tight end room. It's really just Max Williams. He is an injury-prone, but kind of a stud when he's on the field tight end. A really good blocker, really good ball skills, run after catch. Not an exceptional athlete, not a mismatch problem, but definitely a piece for this offense if he can stay healthy, as he did last year. He was a second-round pick for Baltimore. He's got a really good eye for tight ends. He definitely is a guy that I keep an eye on that can be a factor here in the blocking game and in the short receiving game and being a red zone threat. Then you have a bunch of receivers converting to tight end effectively. You have Darrell Daniels, who's an undersized tight end. You got Dan Arnold, who's a converted receiver. He's actually got some pretty good ball skills, and he's an interesting second tight end piece, not much of a blocker. And then they even pick up Dylan Cantrell, who was drafted by the Chargers a few years ago. He is a big-bodied, he's like 6'3", 230 pounds. They clearly have a mold of these sort of bigger slot, H-back, tight end breeds, because they don't, other than Max Williams, they don't have a traditional tight end here. It's, between Daniels, Arnold, and Cantrell, and Larry Fitzgerald, they've got that sort of H-back flex tight end role on this offense, and they got plenty of guys that can actually play that, so that's pretty cool. So lots and lots of names here. You have your high-end elite number one and a plethora of other options, including those backs out of the backfield. So the weapons here are in place for Kyler Murray. So they're going to rank 6th for the weapons, the receiving weapons. And then the offensive line. This was one of the worst offensive lines in the league last year. I don't expect it to be that much better. You add Josh Jones in the 3rd round, which was an excellent pick. To me, I thought was slightly overrated, but still a very good player. I had a late first, early second on him. A lot of people thought he was a consensus first rounder. I was never fully on board with that, but I do expect him to be the big addition here to start at right tackle. And then you also kind of get Marcus Gilbert back. I want to say they restructured him or re-signed him on a 1-year deal. He's a former kind of Pro Bowl caliber tackle for the Steelers that's just up there in age and hasn't been able to stay healthy. So those are kind of 2 new additions here that should be able to solidify this offensive line. But other than that, it's going to be the same. You have DJ Humphries, who this team had to pay out of necessity. He was kind of the next sort of overpaid tackle that you just have to pay because you don't want to lose your left tackle if they're competent, because it's a very thin position in this league. You have Justin Pugh at left guard. I mean, the guy was a stud for a couple years for the Giants, but for whatever reason, he just has not been able to get back to that level for a long time now. He is a starting caliber guard at this point. That left side of the line, you've got experience. You've got a big checkbook, but ultimately you're getting kind of low-end starters between Pugh and DJ Humphries. And then the center is a massive, massive question mark. Is it going to be Mason Cole or is it going to be Lamont Gaillard? Center is going to be an issue here. Cole was a 3rd-round pick in 2018. Gaillard was a 6th-round pick in 2019. I do think it's going to be pretty much an open competition here. We'll see who ends up winning it. I think you're going to end up with one of the worst centers in the league. And interior pressure is really difficult on mobile quarterbacks. These guys like Kyler Murray, when the edge rush comes around, it's a lot easier to step up and manipulate the pocket. But when you're getting pressured from the center, it can be really tough. So that's a knock on this team for sure. Right guard's a question mark as well. You have J.R. Sweezy, who's a capable veteran, but definitely no one that's consistently winning his matchups. The question to me is, does either any of these 3 tackles, do they come in and help the interior a little bit? Because you have Gilbert, Josh Jones, and Justin Murray, kind of an open competition at right tackle. And Justin Murray started at right tackle last year, they were getting rid of the ball so quick, it was tough to know how he would really hold up against legitimate, starting caliber edge rushers there. And, a lot of times Murray did get exposed when he had to block for longer. But he has some good kind of quick pass sets and arm strength to get in people's way. But obviously they don't see him as a long-term answer, bringing in Josh Jones here in the third round and bringing Marcus Gilbert back. So I do wonder, can Justin Murray convert to guard? Can Josh Jones play guard? Can J.R. Sweezy play center? They do have Max Garcia, who has some experience in this league. So they have some options to try out. I'm just not overly optimistic. So I do think it's going to be an upgrade to what they had last year. I think right tackle is going to be better than it's been, and that might in turn boost up the interior if someone like Justin Murray can be an upgrade at guard. But it's still going to be tough for this team to consistently get the ball downfield this year. I will say we compare Kyler Murray to Russell Wilson all the time, and Russell makes it happen with much worse offensive lines than this, I think, a lot of the time. So there's some pieces here. They've addressed it, at least. I just don't know how much better it's going to get. I will say that Cliff Kingsbury does a pretty good job scheming up the blocking here to hide some of their warts. So obviously I got high expectations for this offense. I ranked them 19th, which is higher than a decent amount of people are going to have for them. I think they very well could be a playoff team just because of this offense. But the conversation is going to have to switch a little bit as we start to talk about this defense. And this is a really tough defense to break down for me because I like a lot of the individual players on this team, right? But Vance Joseph has not given me much confidence. The depth here is almost non-existent. The experience here worries me. And defense is much more about playing together cohesively within a scheme and understanding your assignment within the scheme. And you can have Isaiah Simmons, you can have Patrick Peterson, you can have Chandler Jones. But if you don't play as a unit on the same page, you're not going to look very good on a week-to-week basis. So I want to get that out of the way. It's a concern for me for this Cardinals team, because they have a lot of the players. They have some holes as well that we'll talk about, but they need to learn how to play as a team on this side of the ball. Their head coach, Cliff Kingsbury, is not going to spend a lot of time teaching them that. That's not even his specialty. So until they can prove otherwise, I can't picture them doing it. And that is going to hurt this team. And it ultimately is going to start with this run defense that is my biggest concern. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. We just talked about it. Like, run defense, while having bodies is important, having discipline, experience, cohesiveness, coaching, scheme, everything has to work together for you to have a good run defense. And I always say you don't have to have an elite run defense. You just got to be cohesive. You got to be well coached. You got to play tough and disciplined. And between the coaching here and the bodies, I'm extremely worried that this team is going to get bulldozed. And I always say, you don't have to be an elite run defense, but you can't just get steamrolled for 4 or 5 yards of carry. You can't be the worst run defense in the league, or it's really going to make things borderline impossible for you, especially come playoff time. So that's really, I don't talk about run defense a lot, but that's a huge worry here. You have Corey Peters. That's great. You got one veteran disciplined nose tackle. But what else do you have here? Jordan Phillips, who's not a disciplined player. He's a full steam ahead bull rusher. Zach Allen, who's converting from 4-3 defensive end in college, who to me seems overwhelmed defending the run in the 3-tech, 4-tech position they're asking him to play. Very similarly to Michael Dogby, Jonathan Bullard, Rashard Lawrence, Trayvon Coley. These guys are interesting athletes, and maybe they take a step up. But to me, this looks like a Big 12 defense with those oversized edge, undersized interior guys, that it just doesn't work for me in the NFL. The one guy that could be an impact in the front three, I suppose, in this 3-4 defense is Leki Fotu, a true disciplined nose tackle out of Utah. Can he step in as a rookie and make an impact? And you would have Peters and Fotu earlier downs to actually contain the run a little bit up the middle. So that's a worry for me. This interior line, I don't talk about run defense a lot, but man, they just look squishy and soft in the middle to me. The linebackers aren't going to be much of a factor in run defense either. The edge guys are fine. Edge doesn't play a huge factor in run defense for me. It's more about the middle of the unit and the linebackers. But you got obviously Chandler Jones and Devon Kennard. They're fine run defenders on the edge. I'm not going to say anything bad about them. But the linebackers, while they're going to rank high in just a second when we talk about this group, from a run defense standpoint, it's not an ideal combination as far as thumping and containing the run between Jordan Hicks and Isaiah Simmons. So I'm not going to go much further than that. They don't have the top end talent. They don't have the depth. They don't have the discipline. They don't have the coaching. I see this being a pretty soft front seven as far as run defense. So until proven otherwise, they're going to rank 32nd, and we're going to see them go up against the Niners in week 1, and we'll see what Kyle Shanahan thinks about this front seven right out the gate. But it does get better as we progress here. So the pass rush, you got Chandler Jones. It's tough to trash a pass rush that has Chandler Jones that's coming off the best year of his career. He's on the other side of 30 now. The year before last year, he had 42 pressures and 12 sacks, as opposed to last year where he had 75 pressures and 19 sacks. So I don't imagine him repeating the best year of his career again. But even if he does, if you double team Chandler Jones every single play, who the hell else here are you afraid of winning a one-on-one matchup? Who? There's nobody. You've got Jordan Phillips, might be your second best pass rusher, who there's no way around it. He lucked into 10 sacks last year. He had 10 sacks on 29 pressures. To use a little historical reference there on how that's not going to repeat itself, Jordan Phillips himself, if you go back to 2016 and 2017, had very similar pressure numbers. 27 in 2016 and 25 pressures in 2017. He had 0 sacks in 2016 and 3 sacks in 2017. On average, you're going to convert maybe 6 to 15% of your pressures into sacks. Jordan Phillips converted like 35% of his pressures into sacks. That's just not going to happen again. So don't tell me about sack numbers. He's a decent number 2, number 3 interior rusher. He's a 340-pound freight train as a bull rusher, but nothing you're truly scared of. And then Devon Kennard's a versatile edge player. You got Hassan Reddick. Does he play some edge? Maybe some speed off the edge. You got Zach Allen. I would love to see them get him more as a 5-tech, as an edge rusher. Let him do what he did at Boston College a little more, where he showed the ability to win on the edge. Because I just don't know if him playing 3-tech is the way to do it. Does Rashard Lawrence step up as a rookie? I doubt it. He's very similar to Jordan Phillips. He's a raw, good get-off bull rushing type. I'm not excited about this pass rush at all. I think teams would be smart to just double Chandler Jones and force someone else to beat you. And I think we're going to see a lot of that next year. So they rank 27th in pass rush. The depth's a major concern on the edge, too. I mean, God forbid, if Chandler Jones gets hurt, Devon Kennard, probably Hassan Reddick, then what? Vontaze Dora, Kylie Fitz, you got nothing. You'd have to pick someone up, I think. Now, maybe this team can go and get like Jadeveon Clowney or something. That would change the conversation a little bit, but that hasn't happened yet. They rank 27th for pass rush. This front seven in general just doesn't get me very excited that they're going to play discipline and tough. I think it's going to be a pretty soft defense, to be pretty honest. Now, the linebacking group is going to rank 8th, but again, that's because of what they offer in coverage. This is really hard for me to really break down because, on one hand, I love what they've done as far as modern thinking defense. Isaiah Simmons, Jordan Hicks, Devondre Campbell, these fast, lengthier linebackers, coverage, going to be able to take away some of these running backs, slot receivers, tight ends that are making the middle of the field the easiest position, the easiest part of the defense to attack in 2020. So I like that aspect in a coverage point of view. But how are they utilized is a question for me. And it does come back to the conversation we just had. These guys just aren't tough physical run defenders. That's fine, but when all of them are kind of lengthier non-thumpers, it's going to play into the fact that the rest of their front seven isn't very good against the run. So let's just leave run defense behind us. We've beat that in the bush. Let's just talk about the coverage at this point. It's very clear that I'm not thrilled about how physical this team's going to play. But from a coverage standpoint, this linebacker room is going to rank 8th. So you have Isaiah Simmons, which is a very interesting conversation. Do we talk about him here with the linebackers? Do we talk about him with the defensive backs? To me, in a base 3-4, Isaiah Simmons should be a safety here. You start Devondre Campbell, and you start you start Jordan Hicks as your middle linebackers. You take Jalen Thompson or Charles Washington or Deontay Thompson off the field, and you say, Simmons, you're our base strong safety. And then when we get into nickel, when we get into dime looks, you're going to be this sort of rover, weak side linebacker, slot corner, strong safety. That's Isaiah Simmons' skill set to me. And I'm really excited to see how Vance Joseph uses him. I'm kind of ranking Simmons in here with the linebackers because I almost expect them to use him between the tackles more than he should be. I don't know why I feel that way, but that's just kind of my gut, is that they're going to use him a little bit the wrong way. He's a wild card, man. It's really tough to break down how Isaiah Simmons should rank, where he's going to play, how he's going to be used, how good he's going to play in that role. I love the pick. I'm excited about it. He needs to be utilized correctly, or he's not going to be as good as the hype warrants, especially if he's playing too much between the tackles. So behind those 3 names we just mentioned from a linebacker conversation, because I like Jordan Hicks, I like Devondre Campbell. Hicks a really good starting linebacker. I liked the signing. He needs to stay healthy. Not much of a thumper, but he's a great athlete, has good zone instincts, so I like him. He's a big reason this ranks 8th for linebacker. And the Devondre Campbell signing wasn't bad either. He's fine as a 3rd linebacker. He's kind of a good athlete that doesn't really thrive at any one thing, but he's a force. He's a lengthy athlete over the middle of the field. Now, the depth behind those guys, Hassan Reddick, anything you can get from him at this point is totally house money. He is a tweener. He was an edge player at Temple, hasn't been able to rush the passer in the NFL, but also not a good coverage player as an off-ball linebacker. Maybe if Bill Belichick could trade for this guy, he could find a way to use his specific skill set, but Vance Joseph clearly has no idea how to use this guy, so he's kind of a wash. If they end up cutting him, it wouldn't be a surprise for me. Evan Weaver, a 6th-round pick, one of those poor athletes, kind of a smart player, but not aggressive enough. Think Blake Martinez. Then the depth stinks. Dennis Gardick, Tanner Vallejo, Ezekiel Turner. A lack of depth is a theme for this defense, but you're pretty top-heavy at linebacker. I like the group, especially from a coverage standpoint. Now that that's out of the way, let's talk about the defensive backs. So they're going to rank 21st. And that might sound low because I love Patrick Peterson, at least over the course of his career, but he's entering year 10 of his career and has shown some regression. He was just not all that good last year. There's no way around it. Coming off the PED suspension, he's going to be 31 by the end of the year. Still a good player, still incredible ball skills, but just doesn't look like he's going to be what he once was. But he's still, to me, a number 1 corner. But if he regresses more, that could hurt this team. You got Byron Murphy, who I loved this pick. And strictly speaking, from a 2nd-round rookie corner, he exceeded the average, but my expectations for him are higher. I compared him to Casey Hayward coming out. His zone instincts are phenomenal. He's super quick. He can play in the slot if need be. He's a great tackler. Really good player. He just needs to take that next step up in year 2. So can he do that? Your slot corner is probably going to be Robert Alford. He's a capable veteran, maybe not what he once was in Atlanta, but your starting corners are very solid. And then your safety room is Budda Baker, certainly a fan favorite. I do think he can evolve into a top free safety, kind of after making that transition now, after being more of a slot corner his first 2 years. I would kind of look at him like Jimmy Ward, interdivision for the Niners, who really came on, moving from slot corner to free safety. Took a little bit of time, though. So can Budda Baker follow in that path, be that consistent coverage impact from a free safety position? And then I would say the only reason this isn't a top 20 unit for me is the strong safety position. Now, if this team uses Isaiah Simmons as their base strong safety, then you would probably have a little bit of trade-off. Your linebacker ranking would drop down and your safety ranking would come up. I had a difficult time placing Isaiah Simmons into this defense because you got Jalen Thompson, who was a supplemental rookie last year, who actually played okay. He's a very aggressive, quick first step, ball hawking type of safety. Now, that is probably more of a free safety skill set than strong safety, where I like a little more disciplined tackling ability on a consistent basis. You have Deontay Thompson, a 5th-round pick out of Alabama. Smart, heady player. Lacks a little bit of those physical tools you look for. I did like him coming out as 2nd or 3rd round grade on him. So can he, challenge Jalen Thompson? It's just, to me, so many question marks in this secondary, and it keeps coming back to, can Vance Joseph get these guys kind of in the right position? I mean, basically everyone we've mentioned at this point, it's like, yeah, he's a good player. Is he going to play up to his potential, up to his upside? Is he going to be consistent and know his role and be given a proper role? That, to me, is a big question mark. With pretty much everyone other than Patrick Peterson, where he has a question mark of how much is he actually regressing here? What is he compared to what he used to be? So I do like the secondary in general. Now, there's no depth here, especially in the corner room. Your corner depth, Jalen Davis, Kevin Peterson, Chris Jones, Duke Thomas. If you have an injury, this secondary, you got to have 4th and 5th corners, because these guys get hurt, and there's nobody. The second one of these corners goes down, offenses are going to be like, yep, we're going there, and we're going there often. So I am worried about that too. So I know that was a lot of criticism, and it might have even been hard to follow because when I think about this Cardinals team, I love almost everything I see on paper, right? Even on the defense, there's a lot of exciting pieces, and if I was a Cardinals fan, I might even have a hard time hearing out a lot of this stuff. But when I watched this team last year, when I think about this Cardinals team, maybe I'm overstating it, but it's that lack of cohesiveness and all of the moving pieces and the coach and the culture and playing as a disciplined, sound team on defense that I think could ultimately hold this team back. But I'm sick of having a negative note, and I want to end on a positive note here because ultimately I'm very excited to watch this Cardinals team, and I think it's going to be an awesome season that I might even say has very tiny Super Bowl potential. So let's look at the schedule. I'm not going to go game by game. If you're listening to this in the podcast version, I'm sorry. I'm just going to kind of gloss over this part. But if you're watching this on the video, you can see my predictions here. I have them going 9-7. I think their road games against the 2 New York teams are critical pieces of this team's season. I have them losing at both at New York twice. If they can win those, I think they're potentially a playoff team. I think they get lucky with a lot of home games against winnable teams like Washington, Detroit, Miami, Buffalo, even a team like Philly. I think they might be able to beat at home. So I've got them going 9-7 with a win range of 8-11, and I think they can get into the playoffs. Now, we called the Broncos my Super Bowl sleeper pick of the season because if everything goes right, they're going to be a special team. The Cardinals, to me, have a much higher floor because we know what Kyler Murray is. At least we know he's a very good quarterback. We don't know that about Drew Lock. But the difference is the Broncos have so much depth and good coaching and cohesiveness on defense that I think they're more of a well-rounded team. The Cardinals, I know they have players, and if you want to be more optimistic than I'm being about this defense, that's perfectly fine. But Vance Joseph just has to show something to me, that he can put these guys in the right pieces and turn names into players, basically, because you look at this roster, it looks good, but you watch them play last year, none of these guys played up to their potential other than Chandler Jones. So that's the outlook for the Cardinals. Let me know your comments. How many wins do you think this team will have? Do you think they'll be a playoff team? Could they be a Super Bowl sleeper? Let me know down below. Again, please do hit that like button, guys. Appreciate you watching. Cheers as always, and we'll see you at the next one. Peace out.